over at salesman.org, right, we've got this assessment. There's 12 elements to it, broken into 4 different groups. A lot of it is just confidence. A lot of it is just having it's not even a bravado or anything like that. It's just you being confident that you can offer value to someone. And when you feel good about what you're doing, it's you don't need to learn how to influence. You don't need to learn how to, the old school selling of manipulating people. You don't need any of that because it just comes across as just pure confidence, and that sucks people in. Now, clearly, it's difficult to do that over an email versus a in-person meeting or a video call or something like that. There's a barrier. There's multiple layers of communication where things can get lost. But what percentage of sales success do you think comes down to just being confident that you're actually going to be able to help someone?
I mean, if you're not confident that your product, I know Grant Cardone says this too, and I used to think this was so stupid, but I was justifying because our product wasn't good enough. When your product or service is that good, you want to sell it, and you don't really have time for anyone who has too many questions. You just kind of go for it.
It makes all sense. Okay, so I feel like
one
sure.
more thing on that. Um, so when you're talking, like a lot of people will go through and write like this amazing cold email script and like try to put all their personality in it. What our main approach is, and I think the reason why we're able to get that confidence across, is we follow more of the McDonald's method versus like Gordon Ramsay. So Gordon Ramsay will go out there, train for 30 years, create like the ultimate beef Wellington, right? And then you like come there. But McDonald's is just sprinkling a little salt, a little sugar in, a little fat in their meals, and you just keep coming back. So the salt, sugar, and fat of a good cold email campaign is butter them up with a compliment that's custom. We've done work like this in the past, super qualified. Do you want to work together? That's basically it. If you're into that McDonald's approach, you're going to buy. And if not, if you need to be buttered up a little bit, then go somewhere else. We'll be here when your hire fails. That you think this hire is going to be good for you because they're buttering you up more. What I've found is the person who has to put all the effort into sales is usually the worst at delivery. But the person that is just there, like, hey, I can do this, come to me or not, is usually the one that's killing it and doesn't have the time to be this influencer.
Yeah, that's my experience, and that's why the audience is going to see more content from us and less of my face within it. Because you're right, and I guess we're going down the internet marketer route here. So we'll drag it back to B2B sales here.
All day. Yeah.
Dude, well, we could do it. There's a spin-off show here of us just rinsing people, I'm sure. But with that said, mate, what happens then when you? I feel like I want to scratch the surface of the whole of your process as opposed to just focus on where we are now. So we'll wrap up the show with this. What happens when someone books a meeting? Is that a scheduled 15-minute phone call, an hour phone call? Are you just trying to qualify them? Are you delivering some training on the call? How do you set up that transition from a email to a conversation to then getting the deal done?
Sure. So the first 5 minutes is different depending on if it's an inbound or an outbound. If it's inbound and they know who we are, and they've already qualified, they've already given their budget and everything. So we can just jump right into the diagnosis process, which we'll talk about in 1 second. If it's a cold email, usually the first call starts with a little bit of introductions and then like a quick 30 to 45-second pitch. So they ask who we are, and our sales guys will say something like, hey, I'm Alex from X27 Marketing. We specialize in booking major billion-dollar brands for digital agencies. We help them get massive clients. And that's kind of what I want to talk about doing for you today. Just something really quick to qualify them, like a reminder of what you do. And then you enter into the diagnosis process, which, is usually like 15 to 20 minutes. And the reason why I call it a diagnosis is you're a doctor getting a diagnosis. And imagine this, dude. Imagine you walked into a doctor's office, you think you have cancer, you've been studying on WebMD, you think you have cancer, and then the doctor immediately walks in and he's like, oh, so you have cancer. All right, here's the medicine. Right? Versus you go into the doctor's office and the doctor's like, oh, you think you have cancer? Like, what kind of pains are you having? Like maybe we should do like a test. Like which doctor do you trust more? The one that's just like trusting your own diagnosis and giving you a solution off the bat? Or do you trust the doctor that's actually trying to like ask and ascertain if you have this disease before giving you the drug?
Yeah, something that we do, just to double down on that analogy for a second, is because I use that analogy with our team, right? And I tell them, and I do this myself, we do lots of, you'd be speaking to a doctor, they'd be asking questions, and then they are somewhat non-responsive to the answers. Then the next question, somewhat non-responsive. And we find that then the buyer is excited to find the conclusion, as opposed to what most salespeople do is as soon as there's an opportunity to mention the product, to start pitching, they jump straight in there, they start throwing it down the buyer's throat. And then the buyers feels a little bit sick because they've just been like thrown up on of information. We tend to go the opposite direction. And again, this only really works if you have the person you speak to is somewhat pre-qualified, they're already interested, and maybe that's come from content marketing or wherever the leads come from. But yeah, just to double down that.
But it could also come from that cold email.
Sure.
Because if they're like literally you're talking about improving their digital marketing, they're in a golden geese type of company. So they have the budget. Like you're making, $15 million in revenue. You can afford, $10,000, $20,000 a month in marketing.
Sure.
So they're qualified. It's just kind of sussing that out. And if they're not qualified, if their marketing budget is completely spent and their company's doing as bad as it's doing, bro, who can we fire so that we can start working together?
And how much of a focus is this on you, especially dealing with like client service businesses, right? Because my experience is a bad client service business as a customer is a terrible customer to have versus, a software organization. They tend to be better customers from my perspective. So do you do anything to qualify buyers from that perspective of the people you actually want to work with when you meet with them this is maybe a leadership perspective, but do you do anything to qualify buyers that you actually want to work with that are not going to be pain in the asses?
So I would much rather close the deal and then we have an exit clause. And I would rather close the deal, get the money up front, and then fire the client. Because sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't. I'm a bigger fan of just let's get the money now, get them to pay us the 10 grand or whatever, and then if we hate them, then we can give the money back.